amendments to the agenda as printed? Okay. Pledge of Allegiance. Sonia, would you like to lead us in the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So next we have the ASB report. Are you ladies our new ASB report?
Okay. Do it come up here?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, perfect. Sounds intimidating and all right. Okay, hello everyone. I'm Jacqueline Meza. I am the activities director and I'm the activities director and the leadership teacher at the high school. And I'll be sharing the presentation just this first time. I'd like to introduce my new, or I guess your new crew. So I have Parkrose High School's first ever Hispanic student body president, Arlette Acosta. I know, a milestone. We have co-vice presidents this year. This is Julie Haas, she's one of them. Blair Dillette is also a vice president, but she could not be here tonight, but she will be here. Two of the three ladies will be here at each board meeting to talk to you, okay? So I'm going to give the first part because Blair's not here, so I'll kind of take the pressure off the ladies as far as talking goes. So in the past, our leadership class has been divided into 5 groups. This year we've consolidated to 3 groups. And the first one is events and promotion. So that group is in charge of planning all student events and kind of getting the word out to students. This is actually our smallest committee this year, and I'll tell you why in a moment. Our other 2 committees are school culture. So the school culture committee is in charge of pep assemblies. The school culture committee is also in charge of PBIS of the high school. The students run our PBIS system at the high school. So our main focus this year is improving attendance. The goal is 90% or better for all students, and what leadership does is plan and design incentives for students who are meeting that goal of 90% or better, and also supporting our deans with supporting the students who are improving in their attendance goals. So that's kind of our objective. The way we do this is that we're doing a raffle for students who are present and on time to a target period each month, and then an incentive or a prize for students who meet that 90% or better goal. And then also we're adding a class competition kind of piece to it. So whatever teacher has the best first period or 5th period or 7th period attendance gets a massive trophy to host in their classroom for the next month. If we could scroll down the scope. Thank you. Our third group is we've actually dedicated a third of our leadership class just to community service. So as a lot of you know, we run a food pantry and a clothes closet that we call Parkrose Provides. And it's for students, by students, and our hashtag is Feed Your Friends. And what we do is our mission is to support students with food over the weekend who are receiving, especially students who receive 3 meals a day at the high school during the school day. So we do that through a very kind of incognito system where students will get student names. I check in really discreetly. We pack that student a backpack based on their needs and requests, and we leave that backpack with their trusted teacher, and they just pick it up on the way out the door, 7th period. No stigma, the backpack's all look different, and it's a really successful program. Our first week, we fed 11 families, and this next week, we're on track for 22. So, and we're hoping for in the 40-50 range, but it's a lot of work, so it's really cool. Yeah, oh, also they'll be planning whole school community service events, which is something we've never done before. So our goal is to have 3 community service events throughout the year that up to 250 students could participate in. So we're still designing what that looks like. That's Julie's responsibility. So, all right, we had another great freshman first day. I think it was the best one ever. What we do essentially on that freshman first day is we make sure that freshmen are in the school by themselves with some awesome Link Crew mentors, helping them find their classes, helping them get accustomed to high school so that on the real first day, when the 750 other kids show up, they don't get lost or squished. So it was a really great first day. We didn't have any freshmen sit in the wrong classes on the first day of school, so I think that's pretty darn good so far. Also, this year, again, we'll be partnering with Damien Lillard's Respect campaign. So as we talked about attendance incentives, part of what we'll be raffling off will be Blazer tickets again. So it's really cool to have that partnership with him. Oh, and signed shoes, and then a little bit of gear. So the kids really appreciate those incentives. Alright, I'm not good. Oh, get to the good part.
For sports, the team is focusing on rebuilding the team this year. As you guys know, they got a new coach, and the football team is currently heavy in underclassmen, which is good for upcoming years. And the coaching is focused on preparing those players for the future of the season and the team for the rest of the remaining season. There has been records of wins and many more to come. They hope to increase their competitive for both field and in the classroom because they are trying to increase their education as well. The volleyball team has gained a new coach as well, who is in Parkrose alumni. The team has a record of wins and is set off for many more, as many of the underclassmen have been stepping up to do loss of a lot of the seniors last year. Water polo won their first tournament of the season about a week ago. The team is playing in more of a collective group, and each player contributes to their goal, winning the 5A state. Boys soccer is they are finishing up in their preseason right now, and the record is currently 3 wins and 3 losses. They recently played against a very tough team, Sandy, with a close score of 1-0. Scoring with the last 5 minutes of the game, as a lot of underclassmen have stepped up to the plate with the loss of 12 starting seniors last year. It was a great loss to a lot of seniors. The girls soccer team is largely, they have a lot of freshmen and underclassmen who are stepping up, and their team is mostly focused on learning and improving their skills this year. The goal is to become better in the future, and they are finishing a preseason, and they have won 1 game, which was against Dales. Cross country has been the most competitive team that the boys cross country has had in decades. They are currently tied for the first place team in their league, and the girls cross country has had consistent PRs each meet and may be able to compete as a full team in the future. The cheer team recently has had a successful competition where they placed top 4 in multiple categories, including game day chant, game day cheer, band dance, and the fight song dance. Now there's focus on football season, their upcoming competitions, and basketball games that are coming up too. Their team is heavily in freshmen, and there's only 1 senior captain.
To finish off sports, for dance has recently performed at the past 2 football games during the halftime. They began with a small team of about 16 girls that have recently held 2 dates for second auditions, which ended up bringing a lot more girls into the 2018-2019 season, which I believe that they have gained about 10, 15 more girls onto the team.
Like 15 and others like 20.
Yeah, which is great. Yeah. They're now preparing for their homecoming routine on the 28th of this month, which is this Friday. That includes past Parkrose alumni returning for a halftime performance with the dance team at the football game. The dance team is also preparing a dance with the cheerleaders that will be performed at the homecoming assembly. Throughout this time, they are also preparing for the competitive hip-hop routine for the few competition taking place for this fall. And then for senior nights, for boys soccer, girls soccer, water polo, volleyball, and football will be taking place throughout the next couple of weeks. For now, performing arts choir, A choir has recently been planning their choir retreat that will take place in a couple of months and have been working hard in learning sight reading and a lot of important music theory. All choirs are preparing for their skills in musically for their first fall concert during the month of October. And Debs are preparing for their performance at the homecoming assembly and the game. Debs are also preparing to sing the national anthem during senior night and other important school events throughout the season. Auditions are being held for the All-State and All-Northwest Choir. Participants will begin rehearsing for auditions this week, and pretty much every year they do pretty well at these competitions. For band, in August, band had a camp to practice techniques and drills to prepare for the football season and the holiday concerts. They'll be giving a performance on the field at this next football game during halftime. For theater, they are starting the rehearsal process of the musical comedy Murders of 1940, which pokes fun at the murder mystery genre of theater. They plan to open in late October, and they also have theater meetings every Monday after school too. Lastly, for clubs, right now most clubs are just starting, including Key Club, AYS, Mecha, Mesa, Triumph, NHS, and FBLA had held their first meeting this month. There was no NHS last year because there were no advisors and no one took place for the advisors that left. And so this year, luckily, Ms. Burgess brought it back and so far is solid, and it's an honor to be president for NHS too. And Key Club AYS, NHS, and Mitchell will be launching at the Prescott Carnival on October 6th.
Oh, everyone's invited on Friday for having an assembly, and it's going to be outside between third and fourth period. The assembly schedule is online. Band is going to march outside, dance and cheer performance. You guys are choir's going to sing. It'll be super fun. So if you can come out.
What time it is?
Oh, I love to look. It's on the schedule between third and fourth period. I think it's around 10:30, but I could be wrong. Yeah, 10:30. Okay, perfect. Yeah, but everyone should come, and so everyone will be outside. It's supposed to be 80 on Friday.
Fingers crossed,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Okay, thank you so much, ladies. Look forward to seeing you at our meetings. Now on to presentations and recognition. And we have a presentation from Parkrose High School on 9th grade on track.
Can we move way back a little bit?
Oh, so you can see.
Eric and, well, no, Eric and I are.
Yeah, I think that's, yeah.
Is that good?
Yeah, that's.
No, it doesn't have to be that far.
Perfect. Can you see?
I'm not worried about seeing that. We were seeing the back of
Oh.
the speakers.
Oh, okay, I'll make sure. So we know that Freshman on Track is one of your goals, so we're going to talk about where we are at the high school. And so we did this activity with staff in the August in-service week, and we kind of did a walk back in time. So this is this year's seniors, and we actually had each staff member pick a student up there and stand. And then if their student is missing, if there's a blank where their face should be, we had them sit down just to do like a visual representation of what our freshman on track data was 3 years ago. So when we started as a team in 14-15, this is what our freshman on track data was. And I think as you know, since you picked it as one of your goals, freshman on track data is it's reliable in regards to graduation and success post-secondary, but then, it's almost as reliable as like third grade reading scores. So its reliability is really high, so these are definitely not numbers that we want to keep. You can see there's a lot of discrepancies between our student groups, between our male and female students, between our sped students, so definitely we knew our work was cut out for us. So then we had staff restand if their student was now visible, because as you can see, we've made quite a few gains over the last 3 years. So the bold numbers are where we ended last spring. So definitely every student group has seen a significant amount of growth, and we've also then closed that gap between males and females. So you guys got a chance to look at that? Yeah. I like to stay on this slide for a while. That being said, it is very reliable data. It's just one piece of data. I feel like as a principal, like the first year when your data goes up, it feels like maybe this could be lucky. The second year, you kind of breathe a little bit, but then get really nervous for that third year because you really want to see a 3-year trend that then continues. And so freshman on track was one area where we are seeing that trend. College enrollment, I think many of you probably saw the article in the Oregonian. Decrease in discipline referrals has been a trend of ours. ELA scores, when we started 3 years ago, we were trailing the state, both overall and in our student groups. Right now, we're outperforming the state average overall, and all of our student groups are outperforming the state average as well. We've seen an increase in attendance. Our math scores have gone up, although we still have a significant amount of work to do there. And our graduation rate, and then also AP enrollment has almost doubled in the last 3 years. So we know our students are enrolling in more rigorous classes as well. So just to kind of talk about some of the work we're doing that's been in process, but will also continue, we've started to really focus as a secondary team, 6-12. We really believe that we can do much more with our students in 7 years than just in 4 years or 3 years by working individually. So All of our professional development is together as a 612 team. We also run our PLC leadership, which is our instructional leadership group, together every month. There's been department alignment work with our English department taking the lead, but we've also seen it with math and science, and starting with social studies going into next summer. As far as AVID, we really saw AVID working kind of as a silo when we first started this work, and the AVID elective program was really strong, but knew we needed to take this more school-wide so that the improvements around instruction was benefiting all students and the college and career opportunities. So I believe we've made significant growth in that area. This year, for the first time, we're going to have Future Day in October, and all of our freshmen will go to a college visit. All of our sophomores will attend a reality fair in the morning and a resume writing workshop and interview prep in the afternoon. Our juniors go to a college fair, and all of our seniors will fly to a community college and participate in college application workshops. There's some career interest workshops, and there is also some like college letter of recommendation opportunities for them to get out to their teachers. So we're excited to launch that this fall. We've implemented instructional coaches in math, and then also for new teachers this year. We have moved, there was a model for credit recovery where students couldn't access it until their junior year, which left a lot of our sophomores who became credit deficient, as you can see from their numbers, their freshman years, a larger gap and a lot of catch up to do, and we know junior year tends to be a pretty full course load anyway, so we've moved that to during the day, and we actually put into place this fall that any freshmen who were leaving credit deficient after their freshman year through forecasting had to forecast for a credit recovery class as sophomores. So they have an open space in their schedule because they don't take a social studies core class sophomore year, they take it freshman, junior, senior. So they have a little bit more flexibility and can then access that and get right back on track if they didn't leave us on track. We've had conversations around coaching practices. We have a secondary data dashboard. I've talked a little bit about just expanding those college and career opportunities. We put a class in, I think 2 years ago, that's called College and Career Exploration that all of our non-AVID freshmen take, and really have pulled pieces out of the AVID curriculum that we feel are pertinent for freshmen transitioning into high school to take. It's a semester-long class. And then sophomore year, they take financial exploration, which again, pulling a lot of the pieces out of AVID weekly. They go through like interview practice, they go to mini career day fairs, and really like focusing on their interests. And that's also a semester class that all non-AVID students take. You know very well, we've been doing SAT Day now for the last 3 years. This will be our 4th year. And then this year we started a freshman success team, and actually Jacqueline's a part of that. We have moved towards a more humanities model where there's only 2 freshman English teachers and 2 global studies teachers, and they're on the same page in regards to pacing and assessment, and they collaborate together and really kind of wrap around student needs. And a lot of this comes from the University of Chicago model. So that's a new thing this year. And again, Link Crew, which Jacqueline talked a little bit in her presentation. So as far as next steps, one, maintaining all of that really long list, and then really focusing on the freshman success team since that is new to us this year. That 8 to 9 alignment, making sure that we adjust credit recovery as students become less credit deficient leaving us freshman year. And what that should also be able to do is open up more course offerings for our students, because FT will be able to be adjusted accordingly. Okay, that's it. Questions? I didn't hear the beep, so that's a good thing. I think my time's okay.
I wanted to just congratulate you on the progress that you've made across the board with boys, girls, all across the whole gamut of it. It's very impressive. My question is about the SAT Day, a little bit about that, 'cause I don't know the particulars of that, but also I wanted to know if you were tracking SAT scores or success of SAT. Do you have any data on that?
Yes. So we are tracking the growth, and that's another one I should have put up there, and that's actually on our secondary data dashboard. And so since we've implemented SAT data, now we're starting to actually have data from the students who have done it 3 years in a row. And there has, well, one, we didn't even have data on as many students because not all of our students were taking that SAT. But the growth we've seen now from the PSAT to the SAT has been significant, and that data has also helped us like adjust what courses we're offering, and then we go over that with students in their English class usually. And this year in the fall, for the first time, we're piloting an SAT prep class for students that will be after school, that many high schools actually have, but students pay for it, and we're gonna offer it without a cost as long as students keep the attendance commitment. And so if that's successful, we'll continue that in the spring, and Carter Wilson, one of our junior AP teachers, is gonna teach that. So, does that answer your question a little bit?
Yeah, thank you.
All right, two, but I'll
Okay.
just do one. And
Okay,
then go.
sounds good.
Well, I'm
We have
hoping
time.
just to do
Okay.
one round.
The most important one then, 2014-15 grads were the last class to graduate with 26 credits as mandatory. And we dropped it to the state mandatory, state standard of 24. How much would you say that played in the increase over the last couple of years, and which are great numbers, but, you know.
So freshmen still needed to be on track in those 4 classes. So I would say it probably plays into it, but not significantly, because like where we were seeing the deficiency was in our 4 classes, and that didn't change. Like they still need those same 4 requirements, and that's really what we look at when we're measuring freshmen. Does that make sense?
Yeah, makes sense.
Mary Lou?
I have a congratulatory,
Thanks, Mary Lou.
and I have a congratulatory that on October 29th, you're bringing back Judy Kennedy's, which is just one of the most fantastic things anybody can be part of. Unfortunately, I'm having a procedure that day. So will you check with me next year?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay,
We
thank
need
you.
volunteers, so.
Here's my question, I'm working on that with you. Here's my one question. What has retaken the PACE program? And are you happy with the direction it's going?
Yeah, so what has retaken it is those same teachers teaching the during the day credit recovery. And so they're just accessing kids sooner, and then what we're doing is, because those 2 teachers especially are really strong in building relationships, is trying to keep kids like scheduled into their classes throughout.
Thank you so much. I don't have any questions.
Thank
Yeah,
you
thank
so
you.
much. It's a lot of great work. And I just, if you could talk a little bit more about the freshman success team.
Okay.
There's a ton of information. You're
Yeah,
doing an
sorry.
amount of incredible work, and I just must have missed it.
No, so there's been a lot of research done out of the University of Chicago, because they had pretty low graduation rates, and so, after kind of years of research, they came back and really supported this freshman on track data, which again isn't new. And so now they have enough like data in place to be able to share their practice. And so there's really 2 components. One is the instructional changes, which is what we've kind of been working on with Avid Schoolwide. And you know, one thing that they say is that middle school students leave you prepared. And what you'll see the difference often between middle school and high school is that in middle schools, teachers will give the students a text and build in structure and support and collaboration for them to process the text and then produce whatever outcome the teacher's looking for. Whereas oftentimes in high schools, they will give students a text and say, read it, this is what I want from you. And it could be the same text, but you're gonna get different outcomes because of the lack of structure and collaboration. So we've been working on that with like Avid and our school-wide instructional focuses, but then we also made a change in the structure of the team. Before we had 3 people teaching English and 3 teaching global studies. And so it was actually Jacqueline's idea to come up with this more humanities model, so that, because we have a lot of supports in place between Elevate and Avid in college and career, all of our students have a place where a teacher can connect with them on how it's going academically. But if 3 different teachers are doing 3 different things, it's really hard for those support teachers. Like, I had a teacher come to me and say, one of my kids has X, Y, and Z, and they're all doing different finals, and it's so hard to provide that support. So by coming up with this model, they're on the same page, the assessments are the same, so then our support teachers are able to provide better support and structures for the freshmen in those classes. So that's kind of like 1 or 2 things. The third thing is that monthly we have a freshman success lead, and monthly we'll look at students who either have a D or an F in any of their core or elective classes, because we're saying like a D is not okay, because if they have a D, then they're already like discounted for like 4-year colleges, right? So we want C's or better, and so they're meeting, and there's a data protocol that we learned about, and then interventions to put in place and really like take the teachers on the freshman team and wrap around kind of these kids and make sure like, well, what's working in your class? Let me try this in this class, and to provide some pretty like structured supports so that they leave freshman year. So that's the goal. That's the goal, but we're in year 1, so it's probably gonna take a little bit. But yeah.
Thank you.
So, yeah.
Thanks, Molly.
Amy Booth, talking about the Energy Trust of Oregon.
Hello. I am really excited to share a presentation with you. Just a little bit of work of what we've been doing kind of behind the scenes, starting to move out into the foreground. The video explains all of it, so I'll kind of let it speak for itself and stand here and let you watch.
Welcome to the 2018-2019 school year. Over the next few minutes, you will hear about the work that has been completed during this last year, highlight our savings, and discuss ways we can work together to decrease energy usage. Our work during the last year was drawn from 4 goals set by Energy Trust. Goal 1, form an energy team. Goal 2, energy performance tracking. Goal 3, create an EMA action plan. Goal 4, create a strategic energy plan. Although the formation of an energy team is still in its infancy, we did establish basic team positions and assign duties. We recruited a few members and held our first energy team meeting. We began tracking our energy usage. Energy Trust provided the worksheet. We entered the data. We added our completed actions into the timeline and reviewed the results to measure the impact. Energy Trust assisted in identifying ways to save energy during building walkthroughs. We chose specific actions to address during the year and added them into the timeline. These actions may be modified depending on district needs. Here's where things get really exciting. The creation of the strategic plan started with determining industry best practice. We reviewed these for feasibility and district resources to ensure a good fit here at Parkrose. We obtained superintendent approval and are now getting the word out. Last year, we saved just over 312,000 kilowatt hours. That is equal to the greenhouse gas emissions from nearly 50 passenger vehicles driven in 1 year. We reduced our CO2 emissions by the equivalent of providing electricity to nearly 35 homes during the same period of time. We have also saved over 12,000 therms of natural gas. To put this into perspective, this savings is equal to the CO2 emissions from nearly 71,000 pounds of burning coal. In addition to reducing our energy usage, our carbon emissions, and our energy consumption costs, we received over 24,000 incentive dollars from Energy Trust. Let's take a look forward to see what's in store for fiscal year 18-19. This year's goals include updating our annual plan, continuing our performance tracking, increasing engagement, and continuing to build and develop the EMA action plan, all while finding operation and maintenance projects along the way. We cannot achieve these goals without you. This year's annual plan centers on awareness of the strategic energy plan, awareness of how our energy use impacts both our budget and the environment, and awareness of ways we can lessen that impact. And to reward all of your hard work throughout the year, the top 2 schools that meet or exceed the targeted reduction in energy use will receive a cash incentive for the school to be used towards energy efficiency or wellness. Some examples include purchasing an energy-efficient refrigerator or microwave for the lunchroom, or the installation of a water bottle filling station. You can take action and join the conversation by learning more on the district's new energy webpage. Email energy@parkrose.k12.or.us with your energy saving ideas.
Awesome.
Back to going on.
Dave, did you have a question?
Yeah, at the, this is great. This is really, at the beginning of the school year, is this like staff awareness that, you know, we're setting these goals, we're setting an idea, and what can we do?
Absolutely, yes. So we just kind of rolled out the tabletop cards and covered things at all the schools this last weekend. Bringing awareness and driving our staff to the website, ideally to kind of watch the video. And the plan is on the website. There's also 5 ways to save in the classroom, different ideas. There's messaging that goes out to the building principals, asking them to communicate down to their staff with sharing those ideas as well. The goal is that the more energy we save, the more money we're putting straight into the classroom. And Energy Trust for the next few years is paying us cash incentive on top of our savings. So there's money there to put back into reducing future energy use costs and obviously incentivizing the schools.
Mary Lou?
You know, when the presentation was made last year, we were kind of, I just commend the fact that you guys have not walked away from it, that you are still going for it. When I think about the amount of coal we have saved, it makes me exceedingly proud of the business owners. And since you're part of it and this is your responsibility, it makes me exceedingly proud of you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Eric?
No, everyone counts. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, and I love that you made a video and put it on the webpage. So if anyone's curious about what
Yes.
we're doing with energy savings, they can access that information.
Absolutely.
Okay, next up we have recognition. Michael is going to talk about the summer work.
Yeah, I just wanted to publicly take a moment to recognize Tom Dufresne and the maintenance department here at the district for, you know, just thinking about how much they do in such a short period of time, particularly that, as we all know, that summer has quickly passed and here we are in the fall and school has started up and we're a month in already. And I think that the efforts of their work are to be recognized, and any opportunity that you have, particularly when you're out in the district and you see Tom or any of our other maintenance staff, just thanking them. They are here year-round. They do the work that often many people don't see, and that includes on the buildings that we rent to our partners. So I just, one of the many rocks I've overturned in this new position is just a recognition of how much is done by a small number of people, and it's a pretty Herculean effort. In addition to that, we employed some of our students, and I just think that I'm just really proud to be part of a district that encourages the kids to give back to the school district, and also the fact that we're able to pay them and give them a little bit of pizza when they help out, a little extra. I'm just really proud of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, now we're moving on to the consent agenda. The consent agenda is items of routine business that require action, but not necessarily discussion. It can be voted on in a block. If the board member wants to discuss an item, it can be pulled off the consent agenda and considered under its own motion. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
All right, second.
Okay, any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Okay, the consent agenda passes. And we do have one non-agenda item, citizen comment. And to remind everyone, public comment on non-agenda items is in accordance with policy BBBHAR, which is on the back of the printed agenda. And there's a second place later in the agenda for agenda-related public comments. And the board welcomes and appreciates citizen comments. And as a reminder, this is a time for us to hear from the public, not discuss, as per parliamentary procedure and Robert's Rules of Order. And the board chair superintendent will ensure that all citizen comment questions and comments receive appropriate follow-up. So Earl, I have you down here speaking towards district seismic readiness. And you've got 3 minutes.
I don't think I'll take that long. After the last board meeting, the next night I was watching a newscast, and in there was a reference to 3 different school districts in the area regarding seismic awareness. And I realized you people may have discussed this in some of the meetings that I missed, but I'm just curious to know what our situation in that regard is.
That sounds like a district operational issue. So Michael, is that something that you are prepared to respond to now, or would you like to follow up with Earl?
I think that it would be appropriate to provide the whole group, because I sense that maybe you all don't know either. So I think it's a really good question. I do know, and I can speak to the fact that some things have been done under dollars that we received from the state around seismic readiness. But I'll also say that there are many details that Shuri would be the best person to share with our group and could surely provide some written feedback to you, Earl, as well as to the board, but it also may be worthy of a presentation here where you could just get a good update on what's been done in all the schools, because I wouldn't do as comprehensive a job as Shuri would be. But thank you for asking the question. It is a very important topic.
Then you'll definitely follow up
Yeah,
with Earl.
I got a note here to follow up with Earl, and
We'll have a presentation.
talk with you about just kind of getting back to the board on what
Sure.
that information is too.
Great. Okay, any other yellow cards, Andrea? Okay, moving on to Board of Education. The Community Solutions Group, which came out of the appreciative inquiry work that the district took on a couple of years ago, the board took on a couple of years ago, and the district. Our first meeting will be on October 2nd. Is there anything else you want to
Next Tuesday, I'm excited to get
Yeah.
started. And can say that I met with parent leadership last week and just encourage them to also get the verbal word out. There were questions about are people welcome to come, and I'd like to encourage as many
Yeah.
people to come as possible. Yeah, so I'm looking forward to it.
And moving on to committee reports, last week, I think it was, I went to the Education Foundation meeting. And Andrea, have you you've done the appointments for everybody?
Calendar invites for
Yeah.
everybody? Yeah.
Cool, okay. And I'll follow up with you.
Okay.
So the Education Foundation, a couple quick updates there. They have one board position currently open, and they're looking for 2 board members because another board member will step back at the beginning of 2019. So they'll have 2 open board positions at that point. So if you know anybody that would be interested, it'd be good to let them know about the PEF. And they have a 2012 grad. His name is Madison Cannon. And he is going to start looking into grant writing on behalf of the PEF. And so I have already connected Michael with Londa and Madison's because they were hoping to kind of get a wish list from the district and recognizing that they've tried some grant writing efforts in the past and wanting to align all the pieces so that we have successful grant proposals. But there is a person, Madison, who is willing to do some of that lifting as far as writing the actual grants. The update I gave was related to the work of Michael and the board at our retreat and the things that we've been working on. I gave them an update on where we were at with our PERS obligation bond. Let them know again about September 27th, the Joint Student Success Committee, and I let them know we had just had the very first preliminary conversation considering an operating levy.
Sarah,
Yes.
along with the foundation, the auction committee is also looking for increased membership. We're down to
Gotcha, so you need some more
So,
option committee members.
more auction committee members would be great, and they can just contact Margaret.
And then we've got the Equity and Teaching and Learning Committee meeting October 3rd. That'd be a Wednesday, right?
Yep, next week, day after the community service. It's a big start next week.
And Wellness will be meeting on October 2nd. So this is going to be a long day.
Yes.
And I promise I will have to look Brett before.
Oh, it's all right, it's not like a due date or anything, so.
I'm feeling the pressure. Your lawsuit will be done before Friday.
Okay, so moving on to legislative updates. Mary Lou, I had it as your turn to kick it off. Did you have any legislative update that you'd like to give?
Yeah, I do. And I told Sarah I was going to bring this up, but I didn't realize when I was going to bring it up. So it seems like it's fitting right now. There's one page per table, one packet.
Oh, I see.
I have been racking my brain, and I have been Googling and Googling and Googling, and I could not find anything about this event anywhere. In 1996, this little note is written by the first chair of the Parkrose Educational Foundation. This went out to all of our parents to give you a Reader's Digest condensed version. Portland Foundation at that time funded, and all of the surrounding foundations supported. It was a march that was held on June 1st at the Rose Garden. School districts from all over the state appeared. The Moda Center was filled. And then there was a march that took place across the bridge and downtown, asking for one thing, and that is to save our schools and fund them. We are going to an OSBA meeting on the 3rd of October. And I'm sure that all of you got the report on the last board meeting. One of the things that caught my eye was $1.5 million being spent on maybe doing a survey or which made this even more imperative to me. At the auction meeting, Wanda told me she had a box of all the historical records. I thought I had kept this stuff because I worked on the organizing. I had not asked her if she had something about the march. She ran down, and here it was. I would kind of like to know, and I'm not asking for a vote or a motion, kind of like to know that if I brought this up to Jim Green, my fellow Parkrose board members would be okay with it. I think there are ways that we can put pressure on the legislature better than what I was surmising out of what I was reading in the report from the last board meeting. Visibility, and a lot of visibility of a lot of people, says a heck of a lot. And I'm of a feeling that it's been minimized over the last couple of years, and OSBA needs to stop doing that. So I guess I just gave you an editorial during legislative updates. I am going to a function with Tina Kopak and 2 other members of the Oregon Legislature next week, and I will share what they say and hear.
Eric, do you have a legislative update?
Just the educational associations throughout the country, they are letting the staff know about the 27. So I think a lot of teachers in Centennial, Connecticut Bay as well, they are currently contacting and sending information about educational funding for Parkrose. And then there's another one happening down south with Janelle. She's also doing another listening workshop on education funding. So, I mean, this is something that is very relate. I mean, the same battle all the time. We gotta make sure that we, I mean, I read it right here. And this is 1996. I was 60 years old.
I need to hear that.
Oh, sorry. But I mean, it's always the same. I mean, we have to invest in a future generations. And I agree with, getting Jim to support more funding. Yeah, that's all.
So, yeah, legislative update?
So I guess I'll speak about I was invited to attend a summit last week in San Francisco. The invitation came from the government, and their organization that provides support for candidates of color in Oregon. So they endorse and they also support them as they run their campaigns. They also do a lot of advocacy and encouraging people of color to run for public office in the state of Oregon. It's run, the state director is Anna Delosio, who is a board member on David Douglas. And so I went with a cohort of about 10 women from Oregon. About half of us were women of color elected to an office. Some women had run previously and some were very interested. And so the summit took place in San Francisco, the all-day summit. It was very exciting to be there. It was about 500 women of color representing about 30 different states around the country. A number of women who have been public elected to office or interested in running, and then the panel of speakers was just amazing. It was really the cohort there was just to kind of be a support system to women of color, to talk about advocacy, talking about overcoming challenges, not feeling alone. So I was able to meet women from all over the country that ran campaigns like I did, just very grassroots. Get your kids together, make your copies, go and speak to people. Some people had large endorsements, some didn't, but just connecting with people who kind of walked in your path. But it was really telling to be there and listening to speakers like Deb Holland, who may very well be the first Native American woman elected to Congress in New Mexico in November, and other women who were elected, and talking about their experiences. So it was a tremendous event. In a sense, there was information about it, but the speeches are, I think they're online now, but it was really emotional. It was really worth the trip to go and miss that time for one. But it was amazing. I was honored to be there with that woman. And my hope is that they're going to continue to do that every year. The organization is called She the People. So that was tremendous.
Okay, did you have a legislative update?
It's not legislative, it's gubernatorial, so it's a race going on, and so I reached out to New Bueller's campaign and also Kate Brown's campaign, and gave them a little blurb about cutting 5 days of Parkrose or special needs issues here in the district, and that means a lot to us. Parkrose.
Very good.
Yes.
And I don't have an update on past activity that I've done, but I am working on my written testimony for the 27th, because in addition, for anyone that doesn't know, that's the Joint Committee on Student Success at Madison High School from 7 to 9 p.m. They'll have a public comment period where anyone is welcome to come and make a comment on what they think students in Oregon need to be successful. But I think the interesting footnote there is that they also would like written testimony, and you can submit the written testimony as well. So I would just encourage folks to, if you have public comments that you're going to make, to also put those in writing so that we can submit those in writing as well.
Can I get clarification? The superintendents are going to be at a round table for a while.
Yeah, there's a group of superintendents that have been asked to represent, so, and fortunately I was asked to attend. I don't think it's all the superintendents, I think there are 3 of us from Multnomah County that will be speaking, and then I think other representatives from the community. I think that it's like 20 to 25 people total, and that roundtable time from 4 to 6 o'clock will be to that roundtable. So we've been given some guidance on how we can kind of testify and speak to our story, and then there'll be, it sounds like more of a Q&A time that will follow.
So is that time open to the public or?
It's open to the public, it's just not open for participation.
So it's, and that's at 4?
So you're welcome to come, yeah, and that's at 4, and that's at Madison in the same space that,
Right.
I have not even heard yet exactly what space at Madison High School will be. I'm just gonna go to the high school and walk around till I find
Yeah,
it.
talk to the janitor.
Yeah,
So then, I was under the impression that some educational leaders were going to be invited, like board chairs, but you have not gotten any invite.
No, I believe Michael said that maybe OSBA would be extending the invitations to.
Oh,
whoever.
OSBA was doing the extension.
But
Was that the information
yeah,
that you
that was the
had?
information that I had because I did get the invite from COSA.
Okay.
So I would assume that.
and that's the time, what district we all can addition, I receive an email from the foundation, I'm not foundation, the union. But they go and they're encouraging all of us to submit the written testimony for that. Nice.
Oh, yeah.
So I assume that OEA somehow is in this meeting, maybe organized, I don't know.
I would anticipate that there would be some representation from various labor groups that are education related. So I would hope that OEA and OSCA will have a seat at the table.
Will you?
If not, I will definitely, want to speak to some of our needs that are employee-based.
Michael, were you invited to sit at that table?
No, just as a teacher to submit my testimony.
Oh, okay, during the 7 to 9. Michael, what is the direction of their question? Because my understanding is they're looking for what the state thinks is quality education.
Yeah, the guidance I've received and the guidance that I actually offered to like the parent leadership group that I met with the other night is I think specific stories of impact. So I think Dave's example in writing to the gubernatorial campaign to say, we've lost 5 days, tell that story, tell the story. If you have a senior in high school, you're very likely to have kids that have missed up to 30 days of school due to financial cuts, not because they've chosen to miss those days, but because those cuts have come in their educational career. I think that has an impact more so than saying, talking about something more globally. I'll be able to talk about some of the global issues, but I do want to speak specifically to, they did ask about what are the cost drivers for our district, like what's costing us the most money. So they obviously want us to talk about PERS. They want us to talk about specific things in our district of how financial cuts have impacted us. So I'll be able to talk to percentages of staff that have been cut, the fact that we have had, marginal, if at all, increases in pay to our staff, especially considering years back that we've cut their salary over time, essentially because we lost days, and we've never really been able to recover from that. In addition to losing about 20% of the people, the bodies that were here 10 years ago. Yeah.
Michael, do you get a sense of a consensus around special education spending as a driver of?
Yeah, I think that's a common theme. I know that both Paul from Centennial and Guadalupe from Portland are planning to talk about, the specificity of need in special education. And that's not just people, but it's just systemic change in terms of supporting kids from, early on to all the way through age 21. Because those, it's a very complex subject, but I think the bottom line is that the costs are going up, and it's relative to what we talked about with medical care, right? It's in some ways analogous in that the costs keep going up, the needs are more dynamic, but yet we're still kind of operating on an old system.
Has Sam, oh, no. Here.
I'm gonna go around, yeah, if anybody else has any comments about it.
Has Sam Breyer said anything to the superintendents about the discussion that the equity, the board equity group had?
Huh?
Okay.
Yeah, he talked specifically about the round two, asked about interest, definitely seemed really wants to be intentional about moving forward. So he spoke positively about the experience and essentially asked if we moving forward.
Did he bring up our side conversation about Multnomah County boards getting together and presenting?
He did. But this was at an informal breakfast. This wasn't, we haven't had a formal meeting
Okay.
since that time. So I'm sure that's to come.
Oh, it will.
And getting to the 27th will all be on our own. We're not taking a district meeting for clarifying.
You're welcome to the middle school. The joint committee will be at the middle school from about 1:50 to 2:40, and then they'll be transitioning over to Madison. So I'll probably leave the middle school and head over to Madison.
And I'm glad to take it.
7 to 9 is the public comment, and then there's a meeting we could observe from 4 to 6, which would be a roundtable conversation, should we choose to observe.
Yeah, and I'm happy to make that part of my communication for those people who can't be there for the whole 6
Oh, great.
I will listen to you, or come home and pick anybody up who needs.
Okay. Sonia, do you have an Oregon School Board members' color caucus updates? The caucus of color, right?
Yes, yeah, so I do have an update. The meeting was about a week and a half ago, the OSBA meeting. Jessica and Anna, who are our co-presidents for the caucus, traveled to Salem for the meeting and again talked about our vote to, as a caucus, to have a voting seat on the OSBA board. So apparently there was enthusiastic, spirited debate about this issue.
Yeah.
And so there were some that were very much in favor, supportive of the work that the caucus would like to do on behalf of children of color around the state. And then there were some who identified some concerns. And one of the concerns was that they were sure that if the caucus has a vote on the board, that they would tilt, I don't know, funding or influence in Multnomah County. So I was a little baffled by that concern, that we would tilt any kind of, anyhow. So that resolution has passed and we're going to move forward to a vote in November. So again, it looks like the fall regional dinners are going to be where we're going to have to advocate for ourselves around the state. So there hasn't been an official update from the caucus co-presidents as to who's going to do what. I know we have our regional dinner next week. So I'll have more at the next meeting about what our plans are in terms of advocating, speaking to what the caucus mission is, and, just encouraging people to give it the right consideration. Because it really is on the best interest of people of color around the state, to be able to speak on behalf of that and advocate for them. So that was my update.
What county has those students?
My county seems to intimidate a lot. I don't know.
And Mary Lou, on earlier this week, Tuesday or Monday, you met with the auditors? Tuesday. Did you have an update or meeting with the auditors?
I did, and I forgot my notes at home. But I can give you, I gave Michael and Cherie a quick report. We have a clean trip going to both the federal and the state governments. I asked about two things. One is what questions we should be asking our business manager. And she showed me a list. So it was really good because we have to remember that we are responsible legally for the spending and can be held liable. So she was going to send me some of the questions that we should be asking board members. The other thing we talked about, and Gresham does it, is a committee that meets periodically and goes over expenditures. And she was going to send that to me as well. She was very complimentary about what they had found and how good it looked. And an auditor's responsibility is not to say positive things about the business manager, because that's not, they're around, they're looking at the hard data. But she did mention that our business manager is respected throughout the state with her knowledge of law, special ed law in particular, and that she was always very easy to work with and presented an excellent budget to review. So it was a very positive meeting.
Thank you so much, and I appreciate you asking what questions we should be asking. Michael, moving on to district business.
Yeah. Andrea, so I'm gonna flip over to applicant. So I wanted to just briefly talk about, Andrea and I fortunately get to sit together often and review board agendas, and one of the board agenda items from last year in this meeting was to talk about the first day. And I wanted to just take the opportunity to get feedback from you and talk about the form of communication that I plan to provide every 2 weeks. This was my attempt in this here that you all received a couple weeks ago, a week and a half ago. I promise I won't send tons of pictures of myself. I generally don't. This was an opportunity for me to send a picture to my mom and say, look, Mom, I'm in a big crowd of people here.
I'm not in trouble.
So hopefully this format is easy to read. I wanted to do 2 things. One, provide some visual images of what's happening in the district, but also a little narrative to tell you some of the things that were going on. So obviously giving you a picture of what the first week back for teachers was like, and some of the things, the activities that we did, as well as reflecting on what we did for new teachers. So some of the details I hope to provide throughout the year will be done in this manner, and of course want to have some opportunity for a feedback loop that we can all talk about of what's the best way to get feedback on what's being communicated. Is it the right stuff? Because this is the first attempt. and hopefully, that just gets better over time. You should expect another one Friday. My goal is just kind of the every other Friday rotation. If for any reason the life of a superintendent gets carried away, and Andrea can attest that my schedule is impressively full, but it is a goal, and I really do try to make sure that there's work time. The work time in putting the newsletter together is really kind of ongoing, and really making an effort to take a lot of pictures, to keep posting things on Twitter so that the Twitter feed is staying busy with important information like, hey, the Broncos won on Friday night, which is great, and that the kids, I think, are really excited. It is attendance month, so Lisa and I were in a meeting today talking about our chronic absenteeism grant. I actually was talking about a research study that actually Lisa shared with our administrators, and just that 2 absences per month are likely to cause you to fall behind in school. So just ways of getting information out on a regular basis, particularly when it comes to the research does show that nearly half of American parents don't really understand the harm of missing a lot of school and the impact it can have on kids, particularly for our kids from underrepresented populations. It has a greater impact. Ways to get the word out about what's happening in Madison High School. So again, I'm open to new avenues and mechanisms to make sure that people are informed about what's happening in the district. Just want to keep emphasizing that. Enrollment. So I want to talk just quickly and just give you an update, and this is due to Andrea just on a regular basis checking enrollment and keeping us up to date. This spreadsheet here just shows you as of today we're at 3232. What does that mean? Well, Cherie is making sure that it doesn't go under 3220. because that's essentially the number that she budgeted at. So she's probably will be more panicked when she gets back than she was last week, but these are more real numbers because realistically, you can look at between the 18th and 19th last week, this is about when 10-day drops happen. And when you talk about another, as we were talking about chronic attendance today, chronic absenteeism, one of our wonderings, not just in Parkrose, but just systemically, is how often do schools reach back out to families who have not attended in the fall? And do we have verification that that student's actually gone somewhere else? And sometimes that answer is the student hasn't gone somewhere else and we've got to track them down. So are there things that we can do systemically to help improve that, to maybe garner some more kids back into the system and find out what factors have kept them out? That's going to be a big part of our studying our attendance patterns this year around that goal with attendance. I think that's really important. So hopefully this number stays steady. We'll really watch things closely this week, and usually by the first part of October we have a good sense of where we're going to stand. I would highlight that enrollment is pretty steady and at the secondary level, but we have dropped in enrollment in a fairly significant way across the elementary schools. Shavers gained a little bit in enrollment from where they were in the spring, but Sacramento's significantly down. Prescott is as well, and Russell, just 2 years ago, Russell was at 456 kids, and as of today, they're at 377. So we've talked about this. I mean, this is definitely a general trend. I would think there maybe are a few kids out there, but I think honestly, enrollment's just down because I think there's a housing issue in the community. Now, I don't have research to back that up. I just have a feeling that that's part of what we're seeing. But I do have a meeting with the Multnomah County Preschool Task Force on Wednesday, and I was actually just reading some of their data. There's a lot of young children, not just in Parkrose, but throughout Multnomah County that I think we're going to see another burst in the next 3 to 4 years. Elementary enrollment, but we just have to wait and see. So, down at elementary, up at secondary. Any questions about that?
We have the same trend down south. Our percentage schools less this year than previous years.
Yeah.
Poverty down, changing.
Yeah, it's a trend, and even more so, even bigger hits, I think, in the larger districts around us. David Douglas, of course, and Reynolds is experiencing the same drop. I don't think we actually have a district in the county that isn't down in enrollment. Lots of enrollment increase across the rivers, and a lot of enrollment increase in Salem relative to our numbers.
Yes.
It just so happened it was Eric's turn to start off.
I think, Michael, you talked once about the issues with families with older students wanting to go to a school for sports or whatever. Can you speak a little bit to that?
Sure, yeah. That was one of the things I wanted to touch on. So in my first round of looking at intra-district transfers from folks that want to leave Parkrose or stay in Portland Public because they were in Portland Public or stay in David Douglas, I think there's multiple factors that I've seen. So one is that the fact that if we release a student, let's say they're an 8th grader, and there's circumstances that cause for us to say, yes, you can, so the way the rules work now is once you release a student, they're released forever, and they can stay in that district they've requested. If they change districts, they need to make another request. They could stay in the district that they requested. And one of the things I'm seeing now is that oftentimes that 8th grader has younger siblings, and then the requests come for the siblings. And then the conflict is, you have a parent who's saying, like, I need all my kids in the same district, same area, because obviously I can't haul them from one place to the next. And that has been a repeated pattern that's just something I had no idea about until I actually started sitting down with families and reviewing some of these applications. So my conversation around all inter-district transfers this summer has been particularly for younger kids. There are a couple of circumstances, I think I mentioned to all of you, where I released the student. There were some unique circumstances around childcare, but my commitment was getting better options in Parkrose, or at least looking into that to see what are those possibilities, and I'm in the process of actually looking into those possibilities. to see that we have something that we can offer back, particularly when you have families with younger students, where we can say, here's beyond the educational advantage, here's other reasons why we can support you here. Because it's tough when a parent needs certain supports that we can't necessarily accept, and I do want to engage in the conversation versus it just simply being a yes and no. But it's, there's a lot of very difficult stories, right? And there's not one that's better than the other. Some are pretty exceptional, and those are a little easier to attest to, particularly if it's a junior in high school and they've been going to Madison their entire high school career. That's an easy request to respond to. And generally, most of the interdistrict transfers that we approve are kids that are 11th and 12th grade students. However, as these enrollments go down and the demographics do change, and privilege changes, I will say, more privileged families go to bat harder and know how to kind of play the game, frankly, with the district and the workaround. So I don't think that this issue will go away. It's something that we need to be thoughtful of. And I don't want to just ignore what families are saying, like, hey, I don't want to go here. And generally, it's not because, hey, we heard your district's a bad district. It's generally, I work in North Portland, there's childcare there, there's this and there's this. That's better support to me, and we don't have that to offer. I can't just rely upon these things. So I just wanted to give you a general update of what that's like. So I essentially have asked Andrea and Susan Fox to schedule multiple meetings that I think will be worth the investment in time to follow up with families to say, hey, you remember, I remember telling you, like, it's not necessarily legal for me to make you come back, but there are some, I think there's 3 elementary families where I told them, I'm going to call you back in the spring, and I'm going to ask you to come back, simply because I know you need a year, there's pressing issues, but yet I'm going to work on these things. Hopefully that strategy helps.
Yes, to report that.
Very good. This goes to the bi-monthly communication. I love it. Thank you. And also, that's more of a statement. And also the tweeting, I like the fact that we're really embracing just family. So, thank you.
Any questions, comments?
What are we talking about? Well,
The first,
Michael's last bit was in response to Sonia's questions,
Right,
so it
which
would
was-
either be related to the communication
Right,
or
which is
enrollment
number
in
2.
inter-district transfers.
Okay, which I enjoyed it very much. The tweets would also be great on Facebook. So, and I love sharing on Facebook because it goes all over the place to the East Coast, and people are impressed. Could you, once you're pretty sure that enrollment is pretty set right now, could you provide us with a building breakdown of class sizes?
sure.
So we kind of have, but we don't need teachers' names, we
Yeah.
class A, B, C. So we can also see how they break down in the individual buildings.
Absolutely.
And, that's enough.
I appreciate the communications. I think it reflects the times. I love it as a parent. And then, to second point to the childcare issue was a close Joy Center place close by, and that would strengthen some of the families in closer. So we already have very few places, and now that we're closer. So, I look forward to the solutions.
Yeah, at this point, I've just had meetings and gauging. I really fear bringing folks to the table that are just going to say, like, we're gonna charge a whole bunch of money. Like, that's not, obviously, affordable childcare is kind of an oxymoron these days, sadly. And one of the things I mentioned to the parent leadership the other night is that and I've mentioned this to you too, there are internal neighborhood child care opportunities that aren't maybe things that the school district could necessarily endorse, but just trying to find creative ways to support families and places we can lead in. But from our perspective, from the school district's perspective, what are certified child care providers that we can provide that at least offer sliding scales in terms of cost, so that it is something that's reasonable for our families to consider, even if it's just part-time childcare.
Scholarships.
Yeah.
So,
I'd like to talk a little bit about goals, and Andrea shared with you what was kind of updated as the end of last week, but I just actually want to walk you through a few things that I have added as I've thought more about it. I was really happy to see that Molly was able to just give kind of our first example of reporting on a specific goal and giving you multiple layers of actions that are taking place, right? One of the things that we talked about when I met with principals last week is I shared them with the draft of the goals. Molly felt pretty strongly that we should increase the number of kids being on track up to 93%. You saw that she presented tonight that we had 87% on track, so looking at a 6% increase from this past spring to the upcoming spring. I think it's lofty, it's tough when you get above 90%, but I appreciate her willingness to go there. What I've added to the document, which definitely can be more part of our conversation of what are going to be the key indicators of evaluating progress. There's a lot of things, like I could take you really deep into the weeds, but I do want to share what are the possibilities beyond just the on-track number that are indicators, because I think an important thing for you to know are what are benchmarks along the way to demonstrate that we're going to get to this goal. I simply don't like waiting for a state test score or a graduation rate to say, yes, we've made it. What are milestones that give you some indication that actions are being taken that then could prove to be some outcomes? And I think that's just important for our district. So I'm going to scroll down here and just talk a little bit about that on-track goal.
Can we blow it up?
Yeah, I'm happy to blow it up a little bit.
I'm going to whisper to you.
So one of the key indicators for elementary,
Yeah.
now this isn't simply all by itself. There are indicators along the way that can show us progress with, for instance, English language arts proficiency. What you see up there are approximations from our initial reports from SBAC and results from 17-18 to 18-19. I do think it's really important, whether the numbers are glowing or not, for you to see what overall is, but also to see how it's broken down, because the mission in our district is about closing the achievement gap. And I think that those are important numbers for you to see, because it's easy to look at an overall number and be really impressed or not impressed with that number. I think what's most humbling is looking at how are we serving the most underserved, meaning that they are behind in the rate of achievement. So the groups that follow the overall rate there are the students that are behind the overall rate, right? That there's a gap in between that 56%, meaning that there's either lower or significantly lower. All other groups that are not listed there are even with the overall rate or they are higher. So I can speak specifically to white and Asian students perform above the overall rate, and that gap is usually significant. So we were just simply looking at those two groups, which I'm happy to share that in future meetings, but I just wanted to give you a glimpse of, here's a way for you to see beyond just the 56 or 61%, and really looking at reasonable, what are attainable targets, because when you are looking at your overall rate increasing, right, and that's something you want to see happen, that means that you're underserved, where those gaps are most significant, they need to almost double in years to catch up. And recognize that when we are talking to legislators and we're talking with educators about closing the achievement gap, it is significant to close that gap, the effort that's required. And why do we talk about equity in teaching and learning? This is why. Because there are certain students that are not achieving at the same level as other students, and we have to question ourselves and ask, why is that the case? Yes?
How is ESL outscored?
We're doing
Oh,
the round robin.
Yeah, I'm just going to scroll down a little bit more, and then I'm happy to answer questions. So again, I just wanted to give you a sense of when we report out. So when we look at mid-year, I'll be able to give you proficiency at elementary just in terms of where kids are with reading. We do know with an overall rate and demographically with DIBELS that it is very, very similar. and predictable to how a student might do on SBAC. These are SBAC percentages that you're looking at right now. And we will look at those, but those aren't going to be available to you until August, September next year. And you don't want to wait that long, right? This is an important front-end number to then actually then look at what are the predictors. So I can provide the same data using a slightly different measure that is pretty predictable to saying, like, how are we doing in this target. Elementary ELA proficiency is very similar to middle school. I will tell you the good news, and the numbers aren't up here, but our high school, their gaps are smaller. They are not as big as the elementary and middle. So there's good news, and I think what Molly shared with you tonight, a lot of those actions are also reducing some of those achievement gaps. But also remember this, the high school only tests at 11th grade, where at elementary tests 3, 4, 5, and middle school it's every grade, 6, 7, 8. So it is a different measure, but it is a good indicator to show that by the time kids are reaching junior year, that achievement gap is closing. They're instead of, you look at the black African American students, where you see almost a 20-point difference, 16 points, that difference at the high school level is only 10. So it's closing, but by the time they get to junior year, that's really kind of that's late in the game. You're still 10 percentage points behind a overall score that is not very high, if that makes sense. We'll look at math proficiency, and here's where things are even more humbling and why there's so much targeted support around mathematics, where you look at really low numbers. So 28% is significantly low, and this is comparable to about a 40% rate at the state level. So when you see these state reports starting to come out, I do think that it's important to know that the overall rates are low, but for us, we look at our most underrepresented students, and again, it's why it's problematic, it's why it needs to be our mission, it's why our targets need to be higher for those demographic groups. We can't just say like 5% across the district, because I just don't think we're accomplishing our goals otherwise. So my hope, as we look at data, we need to look at it in this way, so you can see the bright spots, but you can also see the spots that really kind of help us dig in, particularly as we talk about racial equity in Parkrose, to what are the actions of implementation, because this really is where the work starts to get more difficult. And then the second goal is around attendance, and again, same kind of thing, looking at school by school. You saw it this way with Karen last year, of looking just the rates and looking at 5% increases across the board, and what would it look like if we increased 5 percentage points. That's fine to look at that, but then also to look at grade levels. You've heard me mention 1st, 7th, and 11th grade. So these are grades that are pervasively a concern, that are different from other districts in the state of Oregon. And I'm going to quickly just scroll up, and you may be able to see this well or not well, but this comes from the chronic absentee, and I know that it's kind of a busy piece, and Mary Lou, I will make it bigger, but I'm just going to walk up here and try to demonstrate kind of what this looks like. So the darkest one, I don't know if it's black or dark blue, I can't tell. This is the most recent data. So you can see, if you just look at that bar graph across the board, you can actually see that 16, 17, that rates just have continually gone up. And these are rates of chronic absenteeism. So that's what you're seeing. So for instance, at kindergarten, you're seeing about 28% of students who are chronically absent, which means they go to school less than 90% of the time. For me, it means they miss more than 10 days of school. Some of them are really severely chronically absent. One of the patterns that we see here, and why it's an important indicator at 1st grade, is look at what rates were just 2 years ago, and then look where they went in the previous year. They went up significantly. So I think we need to look at these grade levels as benchmarks to say, is this an anomaly, or are there actions that we can take that can actually reduce that rate? Interestingly, if you look 3 years ago at 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade, now look at those rates are a little bit normalized, where you've got 4th graders at about 90% attending. Rates are just much lower. So there's something going on that really requires us to look at our practice and what we're doing ongoing to reduce our chronic absenteeism, because it's gone up across the board. However, if you look at 6th grade, and middle school teachers will probably tell you and laugh, in that the 6th grade cohort is infamously known as a pretty hard group, hard class.
Mhm.
And they had the best attendance in the district last year, right? They were almost at 90% at 6th grade. But then look at 7th, where then you have this unusual leap where they're up at about 27% chronically absent. But then at 8th grade, there's a drop. Again, and analyzing like what does that exactly mean? And then look at 11th grade. I do call 12th grade an anomaly because of the way 12th graders are scheduled, and I do not think that this is a great reliable number. However, at 11th grade, that's more of a predictor. Molly said even earlier tonight, generally at junior year is when kids have their kind of heaviest class load. They're enrolled in every single class. So this does tell us an indicator that actually attendance got better, and I can tell you, as Lisa and I were talking about today, that there have been more specific plans put in place at the secondary level where we're starting to see that rate go down. So we're ideally know some of those actions are actually due to a specific plan that the high school and middle school had in place this last year. So I wanted to share this with you to say why 1st grade, why 7th grade, why 11th grade, because I just see them as bellwether years to see they were our most chronic groups last year, and is there a way for us to compare those groups and see are some of the actions we take this year, will they make a difference? And then what can we learn from that to put it in place to then help you as a school board recognize are there different resources maybe that we can allocate to help support the work of getting our kids to school and staying in school. Thanks, Eric. Yep.
We're still going around the circle.
I'm gonna finish with all the goals, and then you can fire away with questions. Is that all right?
Yeah, or we'll start with some
Yeah.
questions.
And then, of course, as I mentioned, like with achievement, here's just demographic targets. Again, there are demographics, like obviously for homeless students, when you only have homeless students, like 51% of our homeless students, and know that we do have a significant number of students who are considered homeless, and those are significant rates, right? And so our goals to close the gap should be more ambitious. Even though their circumstances are more difficult, then that maybe helps us question, are there resource issues that we can address that may help inform and support families that are homeless, or students that are homeless. And then one piece that I would like to circle back to at the work session. So I'm going to go back up to our goals and just kind of quickly go through. First is our on track. And there's a lot of achievement data that we can look at, but I just wanted to give you an example of how you could see the achievement data to help you give indications of whether we're on track to be on track. And then increase and improve connections for students and families as measured by increase in attendance at 1st, 7th, and 11th grades, and a decrease in discipline disparities for African American and Hispanic students. So very specific goals that are going to tell us a much larger story. More importantly, our goals should teach us whether things are working or not working, and that is the hope here. And I gave you some examples of measures that we can use to share with you about that progress. This goal around increasing CT and college opportunities for elementary, middle, and high school students and families, this is really going to require us to give you some baseline numbers, like the number of dual credits that kids had last year. That's an easy number to provide you. The number of field experiences our kids have, you need to know what that number is. And part of our data collection this year would be around what opportunities, like really great for Molly to talk about Future Day, because I hope you heard loud and clear that's for every single kid, right? It's not for certain kids, it's for all kids. So it doesn't matter if you're a freshman, sophomore, junior, or senior, all kids on October 29th are going to get that opportunity. So just that in itself is going to create an important baseline to say, I can already tell you that that is a heck of an event to pull off. Hasn't even happened yet, but it's a big one. And things like resources, school buses, all of that are things that we're working on right now. We already know that there are barriers to that. And I think there will be stories to tell that help us build upon this goal. So I do feel like this goal is a little ambiguous, and I want to tie down some measurable numbers to give you some indication of these goals growing and what those opportunities look like, if that makes sense. Okay, that's my spiel.
It was your turn to ask the question. Should you have them?
Yeah, I know, we're looking at the math numbers, which are just devastating. And I know that this is ambiguous, but could you speak a little bit to our goals in terms of math?
Yeah.
Students and how it's connected to CTE?
Yeah, I'd be happy to talk about that in multiple ways. First, I think most important is that, as I mentioned last year, we do have a new elementary mathematics program that all teachers are learning right now and really going through the implementation phase of getting routines and systems set up in their classrooms. In this, Sonia includes a universal assessment system, which does give us more indicators along the way, so you're not just waiting for an SBAC score at the end, and you're getting multiple measures, right? Like, I'm not a big believer in just a standardized test score to say, but it's an indicator, right? It gives us an idea. So one thing that the new, both our elementary and secondary program can do is give us more interim updates as to how the health of our mathematics instruction are going. And I would anticipate that we should see steady progress in the proficiency levels of students in mathematics. The challenge to implementation is making sure our teachers are supported and that our principals are understanding the changes in practice that are necessary. And that involves time and support, not only for our certified staff to learn that the way we teach math is changing, as well as our educational assistants and folks supporting in classrooms to know how we can best help students in that deeper, more rigorous mathematics that would, kind of blow us all away, right? It's very much beyond arithmetic and so much more about problem solving. And the frame of teaching mathematics is not as we would teach English language arts or social studies. It is different. It is much more oriented to introducing problems to students and kind of teaching them the art of struggle and creating a culture of understanding that failure is part of progress. And we have not created that culture, right? We were not taught in that type of culture. So I do believe that we'll have some more indicators to share with the school board, share with our staff, to see how kids are progressing in their growth with mathematics. And that should teach us a little bit more about what's working and what's not working. As far as the CTE element is that, we know that we've added the computer science strand. So I think right now what we can see is that initially this year, I think we have like about 90 kids in the computer science for all. What I really would like to see, more importantly, just around kind of the STEM work that we're doing, is how many of those students maintain an interest in that pathway, right? Can we see a drop-off? Because we know that kids are engaging in computer science are more likely to engage in the other sciences as well as mathematics coursework. How do we make it meaningful? That's the question, right? So the kids see that math isn't just this really hard, difficult thing in high school, that it actually can lead to something that drives an interest that they have. And I think that that's where we've got quite a bit of work to do, but I think the opportunities we offer, the field experiences we offer, can help drive the interest of how engaged a kid might be in math, right? Like I just worked to get through it in high school because I had already made a decision by the time I was done with middle school, like I'm not going to do anything with math because it's too hard and I've been told I'm not good at it. So, right? Career decision at 12. And it lasted, right? So that my hope is that we can get beyond that significant cultural barrier that I think a lot of our kids still face in our district.
Dave?
And math related as well. So in your travels with COSA, the state target is for math is at 40% around there somewhere. Is there a push on the state level to support better math targets at all? 40% just seems really.
Yeah. I was just wondering that the other day when I heard the deputy superintendent talking about, they were doing kind of the media report on the state report card information being released. There aren't statewide. I think as we do talk more and more about things that we can do more collectively, this is a good example of that. I think that there's a lot of really good practice out there. I think that districts often just have to work in silos to kind of figure out, and I do think that there's no silver bullet, but there are ways to work better. I really am happy with where the county group of schools are going, because we are sharing practice more. Lisa's part of a county group of curriculum and instruction folks that are talking about how they're working to improve in mathematics. And last year, I was able to participate on, within a professional learning community, and I went out to Gresham Barlow and actually saw what they were doing with their math implementation. So I could come back and at least say, hey, in Gresham, they're doing this peer coaching model that they're saying that they're seeing some good results with. The more sharing we can do that, the better. It would be really incredible if there were state-driven supports, right? That were more specific to recognizing the resources, the time and effort that it takes to help change practice for our teachers would be better, because then I just think we could move faster. But, yeah.
Mary Lou?
Well, since we're looking at that, I have two questions. I'm gonna start working at bag, if this is what's gonna happen. The CTE, we're talking about elementary.
Yeah, so what I talk about specifically with elementary, and one of the stories I shared earlier, it may have been in August, is, so this year, as an example, Shaver and Prescott were selected as schools to participate in something called Starbase, which is an aviation-based kind of outdoor school that the fifth graders will actually get to go 5 days. I think it's 2.5 hours each of those days over here to the Air National Guard to learn about aviation. So why not all of our elementary schools? Why can't there be the same reason that we want outdoor school for our kids? Why wouldn't we? I mean, how many people do we know that were influenced by outdoor school and that actually helped influence an interest that took them off into a pathway in middle school or high school? Did for me. I became a teacher, right? And started with outdoor school experiences. So I think that the same concept is there, is that looking at what opportunities are out there in the community and how do we attract those opportunities and retain them. Because it's going to be great for our fifth graders at Shaver and Prescott, but Sacramento and Russell families will be like, why can't my kid have that experience? So the goal for it as a district are, what are standard field experiences that we can provide, specifically in areas like STEM, because we have such a focus on reading and mathematics at the elementary school. I do think that we are not seeing the full capacity of what our kids are capable of, and our kids aren't getting to see or have those experiences. But as you know, from your experience, field experiences require resources and opportunities, and I think that we have to reframe how do we go out and get those, right? It's not just money, but it's money and structure combined.
Yes.
And if we don't have a goal to go and get it and make it important to our kids, I do think that those experiences make reading and writing and mathematics more meaningful, more relevant to our kids' interests.
And I do not disagree with you. So, as I'm looking at this, why aren't we calling it establishing a baseline?
We can. I think what we want to do is...
Because in essence, aren't we doing that, Michael?
Yeah, we want to determine, I think what you would need to know to be informed on a goal like this is what do field experiences look like at kindergarten and first grade, right? How many kindergarten classes go to the pumpkin patch and how many don't go?
One, how many go to the zoo?
Exactly.
I mean, there are traditional field trips, but those traditional field trips might not do what we're looking at having them do.
There's field experiences and there's field trips, and we want to have both. And what could those, I think that like what Brett does with his kids,
Right.
Why wouldn't we want all of our kids to be able to do that?
And I think that would be absolutely super, and we have no guarantee that the foundation
Yeah.
can keep giving him 1,000 a year.
Right. So I think targeting specific experiences really is the goal, but I think it's important for you to know like what our kids do get randomly, not intentionally, and the goal is to get to a more intentional experiential level all the way up through. Because I do want to take from what we're learning from Oregon State and the research they've done around the Synergies Project.
Yes.
Interest matters, and kids gain their interest at school, and they start to lose interest because of school. And by the time they get to middle school, their interest in STEM goes down.
Oh, yeah.
If we're only relying upon their science classes at middle school and elementary school.
And am I correct in assuming that we're not teaching science per se at the elementary and social studies, when I'm talking about concepts of what social studies were to me?
I think it's more haphazard. I don't think that it's not taught. I just think that because there has been such a focus, standardized tests have really, from the No Child Left Behind era, really changed the focus.
Right.
Now granted, I do believe strongly, like, kids have to be able to read proficiently to be
Yes.
able to be successful in science and social studies. But I also believe science and social studies are the experiences that bring you the joy of why it's great to read and why it's great to learn at deeper levels. So that's why I believe the field experiences, not only like going to really elaborate places, but just simply things that we can do in the community that are not big cost drivers, but can be things that we can arrange for all of our kids to be part of.
I agree, it used to be neat to walk down to the fire station. Michael, will you go back to the absentee graph? And this is my last question.
Which one do you want to see?
All
This
the
is-
way to the bar graph that you showed that you put
Oh,
the
you want
lights
to go
up.
back to that?
My questions are simple, his answers are long. Michael, I cannot deal with first and second grade absentees at that level.
Well, I think there's multiple layers. I don't want to simply say that there's a lot of things we can do as a school district. I won't deny that. But I think we also need to equip our staff, our leadership, with we do have students who are chronically ill. We do have students and families who don't have access to health care when their kid really is sick. So it's a bit ironic because we want to say like, hey, don't send your kid to school sick.
Right.
But what is it when that kid's sick for 2-3 weeks at a time? And they're not really getting better, right? So we have a county-based health clinic in our
That's my
district.
next question.
Does everybody know about it? Are we doing a job about communicating what's available to our families so that that chronic illness maybe is not 2 weeks, but it's 1 week? There are public issues that we can deal with, but there are actual actions that I believe that if we take those actions alone by themselves, it will actually make our chronic absenteeism less of an issue. I mean, it's evident. It's not like we stopped doing things last year. We didn't, but something's happening, right? Something's impacting our kids, and it is a condition of a lot of varying factors. But no, it's not good when you're 6 and you're only going to school 70% of the time.
Well, and we're looking at 2 grades that I know well. So, I would love to see what we do with the grant, particularly at that level.
Well, I have a lot of questions, but I just probably ask you the questions. If you don't have the answer, I'm more than willing to help. So one of the things that struck me is that huge gap for ELA when you compare ELLs to perhaps the African American population. ELLs are outscoring African Americans, even though they may come from China. I mean, different countries. I am, So I noticed that huge gap, and I hope that we can look at strategies to fix it. I also believe that attendance, it's an equity issue. And I would love to see if it's possible, talk to the parents, what are the challenges to bring the kids to school? What are some of the things that are the obstacles that maybe we can, get our heads around? Because by the time they get to middle school, they have these huge gaps of attendance, and they're not exactly 9th graders. They're not exactly 7th graders. They're probably 4th graders who happen to be 12. So that's one of the equity part that I saw that attendance should be an equity issue. As far as math, I think I just thought about you could tweak some math strategy that the community could see every now and then. Like, hey, just like we say, when I go to the library, I see so many pictures with characters saying, read, promoting reading, 10 minutes, that's what I tell my students at home, any language. But for math, something that anybody can do, because I think this is something that all of us, we need so much help, and we need the parents involved. I would love for the parent to at least practice the times table with the kids, at least once that's something so basic that could prevent the students from having fears of being in math because they don't feel successful. To kind of change that culture, to involve the parents, to help us change that culture around fear about taking math. And hopefully more kids say, actually this is easy, I'm good at it, we practice at home with my parents. But you could tweet every now and then some of those things.
Yeah, there's a lot of really great hints of just helping to encourage the problem solving, and actually I think a lot of times we try to help the kids more than that really does, putting a lot of scaffolds up for kids and not really allowing them to kind of get into the struggle a little bit sometimes is at a disadvantage. And it's okay if they don't know the answer. I don't necessarily need to tell them the answer. I need to more important kind of determine how did you go about trying to solve this problem and where did you get stuck? Can they identify the points in time where they got stuck?
And the last part, so I saw the cap in the first, second grade. I think that's totally economics, being being sick or single parenthood may affect attendance as well. I should be I believe healthcare should be alright, the same as attendance and the same. We could have I have a friend who works in the other district who had to resign from her position and citing childcare issues and attacking another person who's on home already.
Yep.
So that's definitely a huge challenge in the community. And as far as the juniors, the ones with the highest attendance issues, I wouldn't mind looking at sunsetting any of the open campus policies if that brings more kids to graduate and be successful.
What we hope to be able to present over time when we do report on the goals is what are those menus of things that we're doing that we're seeing an impact, and then part of the work that Lisa will be doing and reporting on is what are some of the things that we're not yet doing that we need to put in place that will help impact these numbers.
I would love to support all moms. They do so much for their kids. Healthcare is definitely something that, unfortunately, moms tend to stay home more, but
So my question was sort of along the lines of Mary Lou's, and I'm taking what you've been presenting, goal 1, goal 2, those have well-established data sources we can compare over time and look at, and I really like how you kind of indexed it so that we can understand where this 9th grade on-track number is with some predictability and understand what's going on there. And for that 3rd goal, I think it's really important in the language that we build up there to talk about how we're going from maybe random is not the right word, right? But from random to intentional, particularly for the elementary level kids. Because I think we tend to have a pretty good understanding of CTE and college opportunities as we're talking about middle and high school. But I think that you're spot on in talking about those field experiences for elementary kids. Reflecting on my sample size of 1, I remember every field trip I ever went on, right? Or even when guest speakers came to my classroom, it was new, it was different, it was something notable or sticky in my mind. And I totally agree that interest matters. So if there's some language we can put in there in how this is not new, but maybe exploratory, we're establishing this is a baseline year, right? We're trying to understand how doing this can help us achieve our broader outcomes, and we think that this has something to do with it. So it's really more of a baseline understanding here for this.
Agreed, and I think that there's definitely work to be done and discussion to be had around this, because I think to be intentional, I think we have to have kind of a collective idea of what do we want those opportunities to look like for our kids.
Okay, so going on next to the boardroom update. Thanks, this was a really robust discussion about goals.
Excellent.
Okay, so you can see where we are. I don't think everybody saw this earlier, but behind here is Andrea's first beautiful artwork. We're gonna put this rose in a bigger way on that wall. And we've been taking Andrea and Jason are working on a photo project that will be some pictures of you I'm gonna have a big giant picture of Christine, Director of Assessment Technology.
Only please when she gets her purple hair back.
We really want this wall to show our kids and obviously the adults that work in the district and then of course the maintenance crew's still working on the trim and stuff, which is it's on its way. It's one of the things, it's not like I'm not making people rush to get all this done. We've got lots of other things going on, but
Will we lips in? Oh, I'm out.
Well, maybe we can let Michael go along through the way here, unless,
Are
or
we
we
taking
need a
a-
break.
I did like 40 seconds.
Let's take a 5.
Let's take a break. We're okay, taking a 5-minute break at 8:21.
So after you get all your pictures up here, will we sit over there?
I don't know.
I'm counting
Do you like
this.
it over?
47. And I'm gonna suggest in the interest of time, we let Michael give the boardroom update, the lead update, and attending the GABA and PBA meetings, and then have a single round of question and comments
Sure.
after that.
Sounds great. A boardroom update, you kind of heard what we're doing. Lead update, I just want to give you a sense of, we're flushing the systems. This is specific to the annex at Prescott. Ultimately, what we'll come down to is if the rate, as we're testing, and those lead levels don't go down, recognize that of the 5 classrooms, 4 of those rooms are just barely above the, what's considered the legal limit. One of those rooms is actually pretty high. Sarah actually shared with me at one point in an aquifer tour, is that what it was called?
It was an event put on by Water Bureau and the Columbia River Watershed Council. Yeah,
And
Columbia Sioux River, whatever their name is.
Sarah did learn, and we have no idea, this is just a theory, that actually earlier this year, earlier than most years, they actually started blending the Bull Run water with well water. And it does have the ability to kind of change the water enough to where it could impact the piping. Bottom line is, if those rates don't go down, Sheree and I will be talking to you about like what it will cost to bust into the walls to fix the pipes. Because we don't want to, live forever on bottled water that we're currently providing to kids. We're working on it, so stay tuned. There'll be some more updates. Dave and Mary Lou and I attended the Gateway Business Association meeting, which was actually quite interesting. Some unexpected discussion. I learned a lot. I really liked that they had a kind of more community-based approach to what they presented. That they talked specifically about homelessness in the area, and I just found that to be helpful. One of the challenges I think we'll need to discuss, probably more so at a work session, is like we can't attend all the meetings. The schedule makes it really tough to get to them all, but I do think that it's important to have a presence. I don't think that that means for every single meeting, but I actually like the idea of even potentially of just having planned points in time where myself and the board member can go. I just felt better being there with Dave and Mary Lou. We haven't got to reflect on what the conversation was, but I did learn more about resources that are in our community that I wasn't aware of before. So I felt like it was a good use of our time. That's it.
Dave, if you had any questions or comments to go along.
I agree with Michael. That was some really good information on community, what is in our community, what the shelters and what's going on, and some good conversation. So I mean, it was lively at times, but it was some good conversation.
Yes,
So,
it was.
that's
I agree, and I said, not a long time ago, but last spring, beginning of this year, I do think it's important that we have a presence at both of them. And how we decide to do it, working with Michael, probably needs discussion in a work session.
Eric?
No, thank you for attending. That will you.
Thank you. Okay. Oh, teaching and learning, Lisa Collins with an update on the chronic absenteeism grant. Oh, I skipped Sonia.
because, Eric, did you have it? I'm
No,
sorry.
I wanna know what happened to me, we talk later.
Well, while Lisa is walking up or staying there.
I'm sorry, I looked down at my paper and I realized.
I
I think that's gonna happen.
It's easy to say, Sonia. A male made a comment, and it wasn't me. A female reacted very strongly.
This, again, wasn't you.
It was not me.
Okay. Chronic absenteeism rate.
You'll start there. Hi,
Hi.
good evening. And so Michael talked a lot about the data already, so you have a good knowledge of where our challenges are. And one of the things to kind of couple what Michael talked about is we want to look for some systematic gaps. We want to look for a gap, and we're going to do a gap analysis of where and why aren't our children coming to school. And part of doing that is to look at our current practices. Messaging is part of our first goal. So you'll see this is a website that you can find from our Parkrose website under Teaching and Learning. Messaging is part of it, and it seems like messaging wouldn't be that big of a deal, but it's a big deal and it makes a difference, and research has told us that it makes a difference. And what we're looking to do is to have a K-12 system in common alignment from each school of what our practices are, how we're following up with students. Like Michael talked about the 10-day drop and kids are gone. You know, are we reaching out to those kids that are not coming to school? Some of them may be in other school districts. Sometimes they don't ask for a CUME if they go out of state. Some of those nuances. And so we're looking at all of the schools doing a attendance plan. What's their plan for attendance? And then for us to work on looking at gap analysis and intervention mapping. And an intervention mapping would look at attendance, look at behavior, and look at coursework. What's the capacity for the intervention? How many students is it supposed to serve? Who's supposed to serve? Who's supposed to be in charge of it? Do we have the staff that are supposed to be in charge for the number of students? And how are we evaluating whether or not it works? So that's our globally a K-12 system that is aligned and looking for institutional and systematic barriers that may be present and looking to disrupt them. So I wanted to show this this website because it has a lot of tools on it, and so maybe you could push people there as well. The principals have seen this. Andrew, if you go down, this is from Attendance Works, and you can see Attendance Works has many tools on what to do around attendance, and it's all free. So if you could just scroll down, you can see here incentives. We know you're not speed readers. You know, strategies for reaching parents, and then helpful tools. If you go to the Attendance Works handouts, you can see these are resources that principals could use. If you go down a little bit, principals can use for their schools. And so one of the ones that Andrea pulled up, if you could go to the one you pulled up, right there, that one. This is the elementary one. It's already done. People could print it out or post it onto their website, and it gives you some facts about attendance. And there's one for middle school, and there's one for high school, and they're in different languages already on the Attendance Works website. So that's a resource that we want to lean on, because when we get a grant like this and they give us a pot of money, you know, one of the conversations that Michael and I had is what kind of systemic change can we make that's not based on people? That it's going to be is going to institutionalize some practices so that when the money goes away, that the practices are in place. The other thing that I'd like to show you is the Parkrose chronic absenteeism, the blue one, that one. If you go to page 22, so this, the beginning and the data of this was done by ODE, and this was the resource that Michael showed you before, where you saw the chronic absenteeism and he went over the data. I'd like to go over the goals that we've talked about. And so we wanted to have goals that were right size, and we also wanted to have goals that were attainable and that we could institutionalize in our school district. So the first one is messaging. How are we, September is, you can see if there is attendance month. Oh, I didn't know that. What can we do? We can message. There is an app that we're getting that we haven't gotten yet. It's a Remind app. It's like a text message like app or email app. And so we're gonna get that. They're going through their ODE world to get it to us. And so it's taking a little longer. And then, are we celebrating good attendance? What are we doing? And are we communicating the importance of attendance? So that first one is about messaging. The second one is about why students aren't coming to school. And we don't know. We'd have to get data collection in to see. And some of my past experiences, it could be as simple as a parent has died and a student has gone out of state and they came back and they just never came back to school. Are we reaching out, and once we got that student back to school, we could wrap around grief counseling, and then that student was back in school. Or a student that went to work with their parent, and they had 1 credit left as a senior. Does that mean that student doesn't want to graduate? No. The norm is that they go and work with their parent, we can get them that 1 credit, stuff like that. So the second part is about us identifying the institutional barriers, engage parents and students that we don't know, and I don't have their experience, but to actually get out and engage people and find out, and then to analyze that data for our next steps. And we want our steps, or whatever steps we take, to count. And then lastly, we want to create some, to look at some common practices, which I talked about, and some resiliency training with curriculum. And these are things that are already in place. And so all staff will participate in culturally responsive teaching, professional development, and we have a training tomorrow. And then staff will participate in Why Try and restorative justice. And then we're developing a district handbook on attendance, just to put some of these common, just common practices in place so that people can actually look at them and be a resource. I think that's.
Mary Lou's turn to start off for questions or comments.
Awesome. How much money did we get?
We got $77,000, and there's about 50 left.
Okay. And so right now, you're purchasing,
We're going to be working with a researcher for a little bit, looking at the gap analysis. We'll be giving some incentives.
excellent,
Mhm.
excellent.
I'm very hopeful about this, to elevate attendance to this level. I haven't seen it in a long time. And I like the fact that you mentioned engaging families. We in education, we tend to forget the digital divide, but actually in the classrooms, talk to the board attenders and talk to the families. Those have the key to figure out what we can do as a system. So I'm really hopeful to, listen more about this down the road. Thank you so much.
This is tremendous, and I'm looking forward to seeing the results of this. I do have some questions about the step 2, which is the why, where you're looking at finding out why students aren't attending. And I'm curious, in my experience, what I've always felt as a parent, of having that personal touch, like a home visit, making that connection with families. I'm curious if you're going to be able to utilize some of that in your grant.
I think so. I'm new here, so my intention would be that you do have the personal touch with people, and you find people in the community that already have those relationships, and you utilize and leverage those relationships to continue to make that capacity happen.
That's a challenge with first and second grade because they're newer to the district, right?
They are, but a lot of, and this is information that I don't have all the data on it, but I understand a lot of our educational assistants live in the community. And with a community like Parkrose, which seems to me to be kind of like a family community, that I think there's somebody who probably knows somebody. And I'm counting on that.
Point on.
This is good that we're using the grant as a systemic guideline, and I'm just looking at it. When money's gone, it's gone, so that's good that we're honing in on that system.
Thank you so much. And but I was looking at, through what Michael said and what you said, I wondered if all of the rhetoric from last year around immigration, is there any demographic breakdown in our data that would suggest that the absenteeism could have been related to some of that really strong rhetoric in families last year?
I don't know if there's a correlation, but definitely we have, earlier, I think it's on page 10, it's broken down by race.
Yeah, our Hispanic Latino students specifically are at about a 72% rate. Their chronic absent are 28%, which is pretty high. It's one of the higher groups.
Is that it?
Well, I guess the thing to follow up on that would be, what has that been like in years past?
Yeah.
My guess is as you saw from the data, that 16, 17 was actually a spike in many grade levels. So I could go back and look, but I know that it was at 28%.
You know, we can also compare it across how folks see what they right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just curious thinking about that. Anyway, thank you.
You're welcome.
Business and operations.
Yeah. So Cherie is at the ASBO conference, and she's actually going to be back tomorrow, but she's provided in your packet the budget committee vacancy postings, posting for position 5, and then included a proposed budget calendar for fiscal year 1920. And this is just as required by policy. So it looks like the application deadline is the 19th of November, and then it looks like at our November business meeting, we'll be interviewing for our candidates for the budget.
Eric, Terry, if there's questions.
No questions. Thank you.
Sonia?
No questions.
Meredith?
2, will Andrea put the vacancy on Facebook?
Will I put the what?
Vacancy
Yes.
on Facebook. And second, under the proposed budget calendar, I saw nothing for a Saturday meeting for the board to goal set.
Yeah, I really like to talk about that, and I'd like for you to hear from Cherie, just in terms of her perspective of when will be the best time for her to give you the best estimate. Because, recognize in January she's giving you an estimate, and I think that's going to be really important. So she had asked if at a work session prior to winter, because I can't remember if we did it in late January or in February.
Yeah, I think it's January.
I have appreciated it as a member of the cabinet. I know that our both PFA and OSEA have participated in kind of that listening session. I think what we want to talk about is for Cherie to just share what's the reasonable timeline. She had some concern about some of the timeline, particularly this year, because the legislature will just be in session. But by December, I think first week of December, the governor will release her proposed budget, statewide budget, and that will give us at least a starting point where then people start talking about that number, right? Which will be up into the, upper 80s, low 90s billion range.
It's like a deja vu all the time.
So yes, we just didn't want to publish a date because she did ask for me to talk with the board about her having an opportunity to just talk about some of the finances around it, so.
Makes total sense.
Yep.
Okay. OSEA monthly report.
We're actually going to swap real quick.
I don't know.
Well, again, I'm going to try and go fast here because I've taken a lot of notes to respond to some things people have said. A couple of things I want to mention first is we're just about, if not at, 100% of our certified teachers joining into our union. As you're probably familiar with now, it's it's something we have to work a little bit harder with the Janus decision. And I'm not really worried about this year so much or next year, but it's those coming generations of teachers that are starting to get brainwashed with information in their minds. We're really going to have to sell our union, so that's good news there. Jacqueline very earlier mentioned the Parkrose Provides program, so I won't talk about that again. But as for our schools, we're 3 weeks in now, so things are settled into place. And there's back to school night, Wednesday for the elementaries. High school had it last week, middle school 2 weeks ago. One of the things, Lisa, I was thinking of was that handout you showed about attendance. It would be awesome if in the 2 days we could get that at the table. They hit all those families coming in the buildings, put the Parkrose logo, slap it on there, and steal it, make it ours. I don't know what we need to do there. The Remind app, that is trickling out amongst the schools. There's already teachers using that. I use something called Class Dojo, which hits a lot of different things, but I can message with families that way as well. Mary Lou, you were talking about, you asked earlier, about science and social studies and how that works in schools. And, since I've been here, there's just been, I don't think it's just Parkrose, but at schools, it's just reading, writing, math. That's what you hit, We don't need a librarian, we don't need PE, we got to hit those things. And so it's kind of tough because we have a master schedule that has all these things laid out. But what you can do is within your reading block or your math, you can read about science and social studies. And so that's what personally, I really love about our reading curriculum is it's National Geographic based. So you're getting a lot of social studies there. But if you want to do a science experiment in class, you have to find where in that master schedule you're going to take that time or where you're going to do art. Because on that master schedule, it's not laid out there. And so you're going to have to sometimes defend why it is that you're doing this during school day when it says you should be doing something else. So another opportunity to do that is an intervention block. So that's separate of our math and our literacy time. There's a half an hour intervention time, so that's another opportunity to try and get those opportunities. And then we were talking about those special opportunities and experiences about those schools that are going to get to go to the air base. And you brought up my field trip the past 3 years. So sadly, that is no longer happening for a couple of reasons I found out at the end of summer. So, it's tough because a lot of us want to talk about how important science and social studies are and those really unique experiences. And when your ability to try and do that for your kids gets taken away from you, it's frustrating. And the foundation gave me money, $1,000, as you know, so it wasn't just me. But I made that trip happen the past 3 years.
I know.
And I'm willing to do that, but I don't have the option any longer. So it's tough because I remember outdoor school. I remember going to, Camp Howard and shooting a bow and arrow for the first time. And those are things that I remember, and my teachers made that happen. So I know that I'm all over the place, but I wanted to get all that in and then see if anybody had any questions that I can answer. I'm not going to talk about why I'm not going on the field trip with a camera.
No, I
just
yeah, because, yeah.
I don't have
So first day, everything kind of for teachers, everything was okay. Everything kind of went into. You alluded to third week, but
Yeah.
everybody's
That first day is crazy because the day before you're still on break. And then the next day you're working. And so it's not just the students, it's the families and everything. We have a new principal at Sacramento, our yearly trend of a new principal every year for the past 3 years. So she's kind of learning as she goes, and we're learning how to work with her and with the students. And Russell also has a new principal, but she has admin experience. And actually tomorrow I'm going to go meet with her for the first time and chat. So
Poor lady.
Sorry? Is it correlated?
No, I didn't say a word.
Oh, okay, I thought there was something over there. Yeah, the honeymoon period is definitely over from first day, first week, and, you know, things are settling into place.
Yeah, and nobody understands the nightmares one teacher has before the first day of school.
I don't have nightmares,
Oh.
but, yeah.
I have a question. What is OEA doing? I know that you probably endorsed some candidates, but what are we doing about school funding for OEA? What's their stand? What's their action?
My short answer is I don't know.
I appreciate that, thank you.
There's things within the political realm that aren't my specialty, and there's other people I could direct you towards. In the union leadership that could probably answer that better. She's one of them.
Yeah,
Yeah. I have my limits.
I understand that is what a good
Sorry
president.
about that.
No, it's what a good president of OEA, of
Okay.
PFA does.
All right.
No, I mean, if some of your teachers would send some testimonies to the 27. There's a educational forum at my son happening. They can just try the experiences.
Okay.
Thank you for what you do, and I forgot the other thing.
No.
But
Sorry about that.
I remember the time.
All right. You know how to find me if you think of
Yeah.
it. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Matt.
Thanks, Rick.
Walk out while I'm talking.
Yeah, I'll go slowly.
That's all right, I don't have a whole bunch of sleep.
Well, he's got two little kids.
It's been a long, it's always a long day for everybody here.
I need that kind
Oh,
Good evening. So I don't have a ton to report right now, but just to go over the basics, we've been working with the district a lot, particularly Mary and Michael, to get some agreements in place to handle some, different oddball situations, MOUs we call them, for our kind of addendums to our contract. And it seems like we've been doing a lot of them lately, but we're getting a lot of those cracks and crevices closed up in the contract. Things come up that weren't anticipated, and so we have to find a way to deal with them. And we've been taking care of a lot of those. Brett had talked about membership with his group. Say, we have the same situation, and that we're having to really go out and work to get those members signed up. We are at something like 99% of our existing employees, and we've already signed up about 25% of the new employees, and we're of course still working on reaching out to them and getting them signed up. Frankly, it's been a little easier than I thought. I think people are really understanding the value of what we do, and that's that feels good because I put a lot of work into it. But it's an ongoing process. Perhaps even more for us as classified employees, because we have people coming and going all year long, whereas teachers, it tends to be just over the change of school year where you have people leave and new people come in. So that's our big thing. We have our first chapter meeting of the year tomorrow. We're actually going to be meeting here in the boardroom tomorrow, and our plan is to do that for most of our meetings throughout the year. It's it's kind of a revamped space. It's kind of nice, but we reached out to our members and did some surveying and determined that this seemed to be a pretty good location for a lot of the people, at least the ones that were interested in coming to meetings. So we're going to give that a try. We're moving to monthly meetings this year so that we can hopefully keep them shorter and have some topics or themes involved with them, in addition to hopefully just a short period of our the usual business that we have to do. One thing that might be of interest in particular is, I think it's November, but I don't have the date off the top of my head. Towards the end of November, our chapter meeting that month, what we're planning on doing is having probably just 30 to 45 minutes of our 30 minutes of our regular stuff, And then we're gonna have a presenter from PERS come in, and we're gonna open that up to everybody in the district. And let's see, so your public complaint, you're welcome as well. You know, anybody that in our district that's you know, in the PERS system, of course, they're.
Well, what do you think I can?
Well, that's a little different. You're already there. You've already gotten it. But anyway, so this will be our introduction to PERS, which is their general topic that applies to all PERS members. And then at that time, we'll also gauge interest in some follow-up meetings for the more specific. You know, they have a tier 1, tier 2, close to retirement, tier 1, tier 2, not close to retirement, and then the observe, you know, so they have like 3 other presentations that they offer, and so we'll look into possibly doing those on future dates later in the year. Yeah, I think that's about all I can think of that I've got right now.
It's always good to see you.
No, thank you for having an amazing communication with Mr. Lopes.
All right.
Thank you so much for the update.
Yeah.
No agenda items, citizen comments, no comments. Moving on to action items. Do I have a motion to accept or reject the 2018-19 site councils?
So moved.
I second.
Any discussion?
Yes. Michael, why are there so few parents?
I think oftentimes it's, you know, reminding, well, new administrators and just reminding administrators in general of, you know, strategies to gain parent membership. Because I think oftentimes that's how much effort are we putting out to get parents on board. It's a question I would need to ask individual schools, right? So I'll look into that and get back to you as to if there's a trend as to why there's fewer parents. Yeah.
Any other discussion?
I think I have a question. In my experience on site councils, usually there's community members that participate, and I didn't notice that on our site councils. Is that something that's not usual for Parkrose, or something that's not?
I would probably correlate it to kind of like what I was saying about parents, and I think here's the dynamic. Site councils exist from House Bill 3565 in the mid-90s, and the models changed in terms of schools where there's more leadership-based teams that are actually, again, kind of going with that trend that Brett's talking about, that's more school improvement focused. And I think some schools have just done a better job of engaging folks from the community. I will say a lot of the site councils have participation from our community-based partnerships, which is great, because oftentimes they're able to, it is a way we can diversify like who's sitting at the table. But I would say that's probably the best example I can share. But I think I would just add that to Mary Lou's question, like what's your awareness, principal awareness, and a lot of schools have a leadership team and a site council. And a lot of the site councils are focused more on family engagement, specific tasks within the overall school improvement plan. So I can do that for you.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Okay, the motion passes.
I move that we accept superintendent's review of student, parent, and staff handbooks 2018-2019.
Second.
Okay, any discussion?
Yes.
Is it regarding your email from earlier?
Yeah, I got your email. And
That's all?
Andrea and I talked about it separately.
Okay.
Any other discussion?
I called the question.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Okay, motion to accept or reject the 2018-2019 board norms.
So moved.
Second?
I second.
Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay.
Are you-
Well,
Motion to accept or reject the 2018-2019 board core values.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion passes.
It's hard in the right position.
What's that? To remember all the words?
No,
In the right
no,
time.
to remember that you also have to say,
Motion to accept or reject 2018-2019 board superintendent goals.
And so moved.
second.
Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion passes. Motion to accept or reject the budget committee vacancy position number 5.
So moved. Second.
So we'll say Sonia and Eric. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion passes. A motion to accept or reject proposed budget calendar for fiscal year 1920.
I move to table this until Sherby presents to the board.
Does Michael need a motion today, or is this?
Do we have to have this passed? I mean, I could definitely ask Sheree to speak to it. I don't think it would take a long time. I just wanted to give her an opportunity to talk to the board, which would, the amendment would be to the calendar would be adding, that late January, early February.
So we
date.
could pass it tonight
You can
and then
pass it,
amend
you can
it
amend
with
it.
that additional date?
Okay.
So I move
I know that.
Okay, so Sonia moves that we accept the proposed budget calendar for fiscal year 1920.
You can say that my motion has failed.
Oh, Mary Lou's motion failed. Sonia,
I so move that we accept the proposed budget calendar for fiscal year 2019-2020.
second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Nay. Motion passes. Okay, okay, number 14, discussion, future agenda items. I appreciate, Andrea, that you put the questions to ask ourselves as we are thinking about these things. Let's see, it was Dave's turn to kick off any discussion. Okay. Mary Lou?
No, I'm gonna hold it for a week.
Eric? Sonia? I also have none. Oh, the only thing I did want to say is Andrea, in addition, the website's been looking good, lots of good stuff up on there, but Andrea posted the agenda tracker document. It's got a disclaimer, it says like this is a living document, it'll be updated, it's under the board section of the district website. So we're getting things moving and trying to be clear and transparent about how we're communicating and what we're talking about at our meetings. And I might try to think of a different name for that document, or Andrea and I are gonna meet on Wednesday to see, so it's not confusing with the agendas that are in board book. You know, maybe it's just a topic tracker or something like that.
So if something was on there, like, I'm gonna bring up the TEL survey, it would be itemized whenever it was going to be put on
If we had, voted in a meeting, like we talk about, yes, we would like that to add that to the agenda, and then we say, everybody please see it, then we would add it up on there. Are we missing something?
there? Were we going to talk about the TEL survey?
Yeah.
Work session.
This is,
Yes.
I
Yeah.
would say this is posted, but it's not like 100% up to date. So Andrea and I were gonna meet to talk about a few things on Wednesday. Wednesdays when we're meeting, we haven't had a chance to meet yet this school year.
Well, I read that there's a lot of information in there, and so
Yeah.
if a board member was to demand, it's really deep. So it depends on how deep you wanna go into it, and what we wanna do with that information. TEL survey.
Where is it?
It's online, it's, I don't have to go inside.
I'll have to look
Or
back
even
at
the
my
public
notes, I just don't recall if we had, voted to assign that to anything. I recall us talking about it, I just don't recall off the top of my head, but I'm happy to look back through my notes.
I think that's something that comes, all teachers, I had, at least in Ecuador, that we work a certain, I think it was Spain or something, like we all had to do it in a staff meeting. And we went to OSBA, some schools had higher percents. It's good information. I mean, it kind of tells the governor, the needs of the schools. I think it's helpful to have it there so we can kind of, if we are looking at some of the challenges that are facing, statewide teachers, there's a link you can find it.
I remember us talking about it at the retreat, I just don't remember what the next action was, and I'm happy to look back through my notes when Andrea and I are doing that, and if not, we can talk about it again and assign the date, at the October meeting.
It's pretty neat, that's.
So it's on the state?
Department of Education. Yeah.
Anyone Department of Education?
Huh?
Department of Education, health survey, you can actually just put health survey in a search bar.
PEL.
Oh. Let's see, what's the
I think that was the meetings.
I know.
correspondence and announcements, our upcoming meetings, we have a board working session on Monday, October 8th, here at the district boardroom at 6:30. Board business meeting Monday, October 22nd, here in the district office boardroom. And I certainly hope everyone is at Madison High School on the 27th. To give testimony. And written too. I mean, it said there, verbal testimony, but also submit your written testimony. And so I think that is maybe a little more sticky in the public record, the written testimony.
I'm submitting 9.
Cool.
The other side.
Perfect. Okay, well, meeting is adjourned at 9:07 PM.
Thank you.
Thank you.